Hi, this is Liz Larson with Transform One Idea with my dear friend, Carmela Lamanna from the Power of Rising Spirit. How are you today?
I am good. Mwah. I'm great.
So, Carmela and I decided that we wanted to bring you in on some of these conversations that we have, several times a week now. And we want to start out by talking about the ideas of how important it is to have a group that you can talk to about spiritual ideas, about universal ideas, about expansion, how to maybe find those group of people, whether you want to call it a tribe or a collective or any other thing you want to call it, but what that really entails by finding that group, and also listening to the call. So Carmela and I met together at a convention. We didn't know each other. I'm from Southern Oregon. She's from Toronto. So we wanted to share with you that meeting and how it came to be, because we think there's some really amazing lessons in there about listening and paying attention. So Carmela, I'm going to toss it over to you. And first, I'd love to hear what you have to say about finding a tribe, having a collective, having those people to talk to, and what that means to
you. Thank you, Liz. For me, what it meant, especially at the time that this happened, I was in such a low place because two amazing relationships had just ended. And I went through a year pretty much of depression and sitting there and asking the why me? Why again? Why this to me? And then, began to ask the question, okay, what is this teaching me? What is it that I need to do on my, my behalf, on my part, to grow and to be, more? What is it that I need to follow? What is my intuition telling me to do? And at the time I was following Colette Baron-Reed. I believe that's how you say her name. I was following her on Facebook, and I was a big fan of hers. And I wanted to meet her just for the simple fact that she was, in my field of what I was feeling, how I was thinking of, the teachings that she was teaching. And it kind of got my curiosity going. And I was like starting to say, okay, I really want to meet with her. I think there's something that she's teaching me, and I felt close to her at the time. And then I found out, sorry, my throat, I have a little bit of a cold. Then I found out that she was doing this event, this big conference in Phoenix, Arizona. And it was so interesting that because, synchronicities, we know about synchronicities and how to follow the signs and all of that. But it had kind of started about a year before I started to see the Phoenix bird. I would drive and all of a sudden this truck would pull by with the Phoenix on it. And I'm like, okay. And sometimes I just want to say this, and I don't think we ever talked about that, but how we can misinterpret the signs. So at the time I was like, okay, the Phoenix, it's teaching me to rise again. The story of the Phoenix is dying and then the rebirth. So I thought that's what it was teaching me. But going back to following Colette, I found that she was doing this event, and I thought, oh my gosh, this could be good for me. I get to hear her teachings, and I go on a vacation. Yeah. So that's basically what it was.
Well, I love that you pointed it out, that maybe you misinterpreted the signs, because it's so easy to do, to try to almost overlay a meaning onto something. And in that case, it was a pay attention. And the Phoenix itself may have had the symbolism of rising, because I think it did. Once we met and started on this journey together, there was that sensation for sure. I mean, things changed and changed fast. But, more than anything, it probably was a pay attention. So I'm so pleased that you pointed that out, that it doesn't always mean something literal. It may just be a way to catch your eye. So that's awesome. So on my end, I liked Denise Lynn. I still do. I love her. I think she's a lovely person. And I've been listening to a lot of Hay House, and definitely seeking, as many who might be watching this are doing. You're looking for a little bit more. You're looking for something broader. And also, I like to listen because it kept my mind busy. If my mind was busy learning something, then I wasn't worrying about other things, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time when we met, this is about 2.5 years ago, right? 2.5, 3 years ago. Yeah. And it was around April. This event was coming up. I was, I think, just finishing up 2 years of training. I really had no business going, on a trip to Phoenix for 3 days. But I had this calm centeredness about this trip. When I saw it, I thought, yes, I need to be there. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was in a process of eliminating relationships, as harsh as that sounds, that were no longer serving my life. And I don't mean that I wanted my friends to serve me, but the relationships were draining. They were harmful. They were uncomfortable. And so I've made a conscious decision, which may sound weird to some people and scary, to begin to find relationships that did help me grow, that were fun, that were nurturing. I think nurturing is a really good word. Yeah. And so it was fully my intention. And my intuition told me I would meet someone there. And at least I hoped I would meet someone there. So for me, I made the call. I even called the company. It's Liz Dawn's production company to see if anybody else wanted to share a room. Mm-hmm. And so they said, no, we haven't had any of that request yet. Within 5 minutes, I'm not joking, I got a message back that said, somebody else just called and wanted to know if they wanted to share a room. And it turned out that it was Lori that we met there. Yeah. Yes. So it was, for me, it was synchronistic in a way too. Mm-hmm. And listening to myself, my gut feeling, and just following that path to go. It was an expensive trip. I went without my family. I went alone. For all intents and purposes, I had no business, but it seemed important. And so I followed that step.
Wow.
Yeah. So we should share with everyone what happened next. So we met instantly, didn't we? Or within that, by the first evening, we decided to put out a text. I don't know who sent it, but we put out
Teresa.
Was it Teresa? So a Facebook message. There was a Facebook message, and a group of people said, hey, we're meeting in a restaurant for a meal. Whoever wants to join up. And so that was another thing. Probably in the past, I wouldn't have done that, just shown up. But I decided to. I thought, this is a good opportunity. And so I went, and you were sitting right there. Yeah. So how was that for you? Because you were there alone as well. And but you'd met someone.
Yes, I had met Teresa Spellman. She sent a text, and she was sitting downstairs. So I went downstairs. The same thing like you. I was debating, do I go? Do I not go? And then, my intuition said, well, what do you got to lose? Just go. So I said, okay, fine. And I made my way down, found her. So I sat beside her, and we started to chat. And she said, I was sitting here alone, so I decided to send a text, see if we could meet, a bunch of us. We could just connect that way, which was very nice of her to do. There's always a one connector in the group, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure who was I going to meet, who was I going to be connected with, because when we go to these events, there's always, one or two, and sometimes more than that, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, 6, depends on the group, and depends on what it is, that always kind of click. Their energy really kind of blends together. And to me, it was, I've always been a very shy kid, never really wanted to be out in the front and being front and center, even though some people that meet me say, "Oh, really? You shy?" I am. I really have to force myself to be in that group, and a lot of the times I do feel uncomfortable, and sometimes I talk too much because I'm uncomfortable. So it's like I overdo it. And sometimes if I don't feel the right vibe, I kind of pull back and just kind of hide behind everybody else, and I fall back. So I don't know. For that, it was very interesting the whole weekend. There were so many different components to that weekend that changed my life in so many ways.
Well, I would love to hear about each one, because I think this is so important for anybody who's watching. If you're at this place of wanting to branch out, right? Wanting to, grow in a way, even if it's spiritually or mentally or emotionally, or even just educationally, that there are some things you kind of have to do. So like you pointed out,
Yes.
being a shy person, you still put yourself in that position, arrived alone at an event and decided to take the call to go to dinner. So I'm really not a shy person in any way, shape, or form. But, it is uncomfortable. I don't always put my energy into a group like that. This group, I think, this class was so sweet. The energy was so great. And I think that's really important to point out here, that we were both called, I think, by the energy of the event as well. The people it seemed to draw really kind, generous people. Lots of people that I met there I had really, really interesting conversations with. And sometimes when you go to an event like that, you'll have people trying to one-up each other with their knowledge and information. And what I noticed is there were people from so many walks of life, men and women, who did lots of different things. Lots of people in the healing arts and in the spiritual arts, but kind and sweet beings. So I think that really assisted a lot in the growth and in this environment. So let's tell people a little bit about, how did your life change? I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes your life changes in one meeting. So start to tell us about how your life started to change.
Okay, well, first and foremost is I met you, who we have become such good friends, is not even the word in my part. I really am blessed to have been able to meet you, because it's like I'm looking in the mirror and I'm throwing ideas at the mirror and it's bouncing back at me. So when we talk, it's like we're really feeding each other with no ego, with no agenda, nothing. It's just talking it over. And it could be just about the weather, It could be about anything. It could be about food. It could be about family. It could be about our spiritual life. And it's like we're trying to get each other, trying to raise each other energy up. And I love that, first and foremost.
Me too.
Your honesty, your beautiful soul, your amazing compassion that you have for other people, and the joy that you have, because you always have, this beautiful smile that, uplifts everybody. And you have so much knowledge. You do.
Yeah, you're so sweet. Thank you.
You do.
All of that back to you times 1,000. And I think that's really why we wanted to have this conversation today. For me, it has meant everything to have this connection with you. I mean, if you can't tell, people who are watching, we're both Italian, so we had that immediate connection. And there is, cultural understanding and background. So there's that, but it's not only that, it's that, when we met, we instantly recognized this common intellect, for one, a common idea about spirituality and growth. And I think the universe, and this deep desire to begin to grow, which I think we needed to be maybe a little more careful with. But it means everything to me to be able to, have that text in the morning, hey, can you chat? And know that the journey we're going to go on together will leave us in a place so much higher than where we started. So I am so grateful to you to have that relationship and to get to learn from you. I think that's wonderful too, because lots of times in my life, and I don't know if it's been in yours, I have been in a relationship where I'm the leader and the teacher. I think that's what happens when you are a teacher and a leader in your life. You attract those people. But for me, lots of times I have that desire to also have that in my life as well. Have someone that has a different perspective, a different knowledge, and is willing to share lovingly. So for me, that means everything, and I'm so grateful to you. And I really hope that people who are watching can have that in their lives themselves. Mm-hmm. And if not, take a few tips from our conversation for how to begin to really cultivate that in their lives as well. So I interrupted about the story, but what else began to change for you? Was it during the class or after?
Yes, during the classes. You know how we did so many things there. And like I said, so many little pieces of the puzzle that came together for me. I went there with the intention of meeting and honoring, I can't remember her name now. Oops. Colette. Yes. And then once I was there, I have never heard of Denise Lynn. I never before that day, I didn't know who Denise Lynn was. I didn't know who Lisa William was. And once I walked in and I started, when we walked in, automatically I was so sucked in by Denise Lynn. Her beauty and her calm energy, her loving energy just was like embracing, like an angel just embraces you. It was so beautiful to be in her energy. And then the amazing Lisa Williams. I just love her because she is who she is, and she is not making no excuses for it. She talks the way she talks, and I love it because that's her. There's no fakeness around her. It's just, this is who I am. If you don't like it, fuck about, that kind of way. Sorry if I swear, but that's, that's how she talks, right? So I ended up having a picture with Denise Lynn, and just that her laughter just kept me going. And it was just very, very nurturing, just that one part. And then I got put on stage, which I was terrified to, but I got put on stage. I was like, oh, okay, you need to be here because this is where your guys want you to go. You need to be standing on stage and giving messages. I'm like, oh my God, okay, what do I do? So I didn't want to go alone. So poor Teresa, I grabbed her hand. I'm like, you're coming with me. And so I dragged Teresa on the stage, and she's like, I don't want to be on the stage. I'm like, I don't care, just sit beside me. So she sat beside me. So thank you, Teresa, for being my support.
Do you know that is so weird that I don't remember that?
I don't think you were there.
I may have stepped out of the room. That's so strange.
Yeah, there was it was at the end of the lunch where people started to come in. And I had received a message from someone that was working there. And they said because they called me, I didn't ask for a message. But as we said hello and everything, as we were walking in, he goes, so I have a message for you. And I said, okay, what is it? He goes, they really want you to do this. And this is what I need you to do right now. And I'm like, okay. So he threw me on stage, and I had to give a few a couple of messages.
Wow, I had no idea. That's amazing.
And I have I give a message to Donna, I believe her name was Donna, which I connected to. Also, she was such a sweet soul. She is a sweet soul. And I give a message to her, and she's like, wow, it just resonated with me what you just said. And so that was, stepping again outside of my box, outside of my comfort zone, and them to throw me on stage just like that in the middle of, I think how many people were there? About 300 people.
Wow.
And it was like maybe half of them were there because they had started to come back and sit, and I'm sitting on the stage. I'm like, oh my God, what? Okay, please. I was thinking in my head, okay, don't look nervous. Don't, and so don't fall, don't do this, don't do that. Try all these things go in your mind. Anyway, so that was another change for me, that I got pushed to be really out into the public eye.
Now, you'd given messages before that, so it wasn't your first time to give messages, but here you were called on the stage. Do you have any idea what prompted that? Like, the person who said you're being called to give messages, did they know you, or did they just look at your face and go, hey, by the way?
Yeah, basically, pretty much, because we were walking by, and this man who was helping, I'm not sure if Teresa knew him, because she stopped to talk to him. And then he turned to me and he said, well, I have a message for you. They've been asking me, the Spirit's been asking me to do, I need you to do this. And this is where you will be in the future. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, it's really fascinating. And I think it's more about following those breadcrumbs and following those signs. That's what you do, right? You give messages, you practice and work with people as a medium. And this person had no way of knowing that, correct?
No, he had no way of knowing. He didn't meet me before that day.
Yeah. And yet you walk in and, here's a message for you to do exactly what you're doing. It's amazing. And I think quite interesting that it happened there when you were already open and already saying, okay, I'm following these signs. I'm following the steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So what did that give you? What kind of a validation was that for you?
Validation, I don't know if it was much of a validation. It was validation was yes, because I have received these messages before that I would be in front of people. I would be given, I would need to practice more to be on a stage, to talk and to share my gift and my knowledge. But I never really took it so seriously, because it's like little old me from little Italy, it's like, who do I know? What do I know? Right? And this is how I always grew up. What do I know? Who do I know? I'm just little old me. I'm not anybody special. The fact and the truth is that we are all special and we are all knowledgeable. And it's just stepping out of the comfort zone and trusting in yourself and believing in yourself. And this is where my lessons have been.
Let me ask you this. This is just a little aside. In your career as giving messages, have you actually had an impact in people's lives?
Oh, yeah.
So the work really does matter.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great thing. I love what you said, like, who am I? Little old me, from Italy. What do I know? But what you know in any given moment could be the key for someone else. We never know when we share a message or when we give our knowledge, when we're called to actually teach or just serve in one moment, whether or not we're saving a person's life. I was listening to a podcast recently with a guy named Dane here, and he was talking about wanting to kill himself. That he had bargained with the universe and said, if things don't change, I'm killing myself. And then he answered a little ad in the paper from somebody who did a session with him. And that session changed his life completely. So, it really does matter each time we serve. And I think that's really important. So I'm grateful to you that you said that, like, oh, who am I? But you really are important to the next person you talk to. You're important every time you talk to me. To me, it's important. It matters. So I think that's an amazing thing, to point out. Okay, so what happened next? Were you accurate in your readings? Do you know?
Pardon me?
Were you accurate? Were your readings accurate? Do you know?
Oh, yes, because like I said, she's like, oh my God, you hit the nail on the head. She goes, that's true. That's what's going on with me right now. And I kind of was a little bit shocked. Not really, but I was a little bit surprised to be like, wow, like I really did, connect with the right message for her. Because a lot of the times, studying this and yourself, we could be wrong with our messages, the way we interpret them.
Sure.
Because everybody gets their messages differently and they deliver them differently. Sometimes, when we are showing a picture in our head, sort of like a black and white screen, we have to interpret those images and we can get them wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm admitting to myself, I am admitting it to anybody that we can get it wrong. We're not perfect. I would never, ever say to someone, if I ever see a picture of somebody who's ill or whatever, I would never say that to them, oh, by the way, you're going to get sick. I would never say that. It's choosing the right words, being very, in that case, for me, I would ask and ask again. I will triple check with my guides, with my spirits, and say, well, is this the right message? Because what I've learned, we're going to skip a little bit, and we've talked about this, how our messages can come from a lower energy wave, and it can bring a negative energy, a negative message. Instead of you delivering the message, you could ask again, is this the right one? And sometimes that changes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I do really appreciate that about you in the way that you do deliver, because you're thoughtful about it. And this is a whole nother conversation for us to have, is how this whole thing works. However, I really do appreciate that about the way you deliver. And we just described that it's images, it's pictures a lot of times, if that's the way you receive things. Mm-hmm. And it comes through the filter of whoever's delivering the message. And if you're not conscientious about that and fully aware, it's that awareness to know that these are images filtered through you, through your structure, and they may not mean the exact same thing to the other person, then you're cautious about it. You're careful. You're thoughtful about how to deliver. And I really, really appreciate that. Because, in the past, for me, the idea of mediumship was really kind of not so attractive. My experience had been that of somebody, pushing an idea, their idea, or, telling you. I don't really like to be told what to do that much. So, but I mean, you have really taught me about how the softness about that and how the delivery can mean everything to a person. So anyway, so that's one way. So let's get back on track here. What happened next? So you got up on stage and you had this, was it kind of your first experience of really publicly, meaning on stage, delivering a message?
In that extent, yes, because I had been, before that, I had been in front of my church crowd.
Okay.
And giving messages to my, to my people, to the church where I belong to. But this was different because usually in the church community, we knew everybody, and this was different because I didn't know anybody there.
Yeah.
So that's how this other component that happened there, it's that it made me step out of my comfort zone, but it also kind of confirmed that this is where I'm going. I am not to be afraid of things that will come up. And if Spirit wants you to do something, you have no choice, but you will end up doing it because that's where you'll be guided. This is where you'll be pushed. The people that will be there to support you will come together and they will be there to support you. So I've learned that there. And the other thing that happened to me there, I had a breakthrough with forgiveness towards my mom, which I never knew I was carrying that burden of resentments towards my mom. And to explain that was my mom passed away when I was 9 years old. You know, at a time where I needed her the most, because it was just a couple of years before I became a lady and all of that, you know, and my mom passing away. She left me as a child without anything, no guidance, no nothing, no support, basically. And so I was resentful towards her, and I never really knew it until the last day that we were there. I ended up putting a bracelet on that I have some dangling, it looks like jewel diamonds, but they're not, they're plastic beads. They're like a teardrop. And as I put that on, and we ended up going to the last event we did, I believe it was Denise Lynn, she was doing a regression to birth. And when I did that, you know, I was asking, well, why I never connect with my mom. Since she had passed, I've never felt her around. And all of a sudden was like this, you know, flooded gates opening and all of that. And how I was resentful towards her. So I was blocking it because of that resentment that I had. So that was another component of me of shedding my other skin, sort of, you know, another layer, and allowing that connection with my mom back again.
Which is absolutely massive. You know, I mean, that's massive. There's so many pieces and aspects to that, you know, for it to have that kind of a shift is amazing. And I think the other thing I love about that story is that it was, you know, the putting on of a bracelet. You know, Denise's regression probably did, you know, loosen things up, till the earth a little bit. And then this one moment of putting on the bracelet, which I think really talks about our topic today, the being called, the being drawn, the allowing. It sounds so much like when you got there, you really allowed this flow. You allowed yourself to be taken on stage. You could have said no. And in another period of time, you might have said no, you know?
Yeah.
And then the allowing of this a breakthrough with your mom, you know, that it just takes a second. And I think, not to speak for you, but I think that's something we may have learned in our relationship as well, that the most unexpected things just occur when we're not trying, when we're having a casual conversation, when we have casually gone to Mount Shasta, things happen.
Yes.
So just a little teaser in advance. Carmela and I had this amazing experience in Mount Shasta that is really our aim and what we want to share with you. But later on, we want to build this foundation for how amazing the experiences we've had together and with a larger collective have been. So Mount Shasta is to come. So I also want to talk a little bit about, in your experience, how did this, besides meeting me, did your collective begin to expand? Because you said in the beginning you had 2 friends that you had lost relationships with. And I remember that clearly because maybe we had sat at the same table for lunch by then, I think. And I recall us going from, the lunch was in the downstairs of this massive hotel in Phoenix. And we were riding the escalator up. And you were saying that you had back pain. And so all of a sudden it popped in my mind. I said, you know, I know that sometimes back pain can be betrayal. And sometimes it's that. And the expression on your face and what you said, like I can picture the sound. You're like, oh, yeah, like I have, that's true for me. I've experienced betrayal. So I know that it was really active. You know, yeah, I mean, I recall that clearly. So it was really active in your field, I think, at that time. And I know, you know, from our conversations after that, it was really active. So you were in the process of unwinding and getting those. But then what happened after that? I mean, how did your circle begin to expand?
In my collective, my spiritual tribe, or in that case, because we do have different collective, I believe, right? We have the everyday friends who are support us and who guide us in a more of a level-headed kind of in this world. And then we have the ones who we meet at events like this, that like you and like Cora and so many other of my friends here, that they are just feeding the spiritual side of us. I forgot.
We were talking about how, the collective begins to expand. So let me clarify just a little bit, because Carmela and I had this conversation before we actually started recording about the different ways that we use to describe this group. So, I have friends. We live, thousands of miles away. So we see each other, on Zoom or on FaceTime, a lot, but it's not the same as being in the same town. So I have this group of friends that are like family that I have coffee with and hang out, and we really are in each other's lives, on a daily basis and all of that. But they're not the people that I can talk to about the kinds of things we discuss, spiritual growth, universal growth. We can't really talk about aliens without them making fun of me, And so in this way, I have what I consider a collective of people now that I have slowly, begun to know and learn from, and who are incredible teachers in their own rights, and that these conversations are possible. And so I call it my collective, which I think is incredibly important in this day and time, that we have this, that we can share information. I think from ourselves, you and I, how quickly we've grown in the last 2.5 years, how quickly ideas have expanded, then we take those, and you're there in Toronto with the people that you're face to face with and share. And I do that also. And so my collective spreads over, the whole country, really, and my local, of people that we are sharing information and growing. So I think what's interesting about that especially is that the people in that I know here, we don't all come from the same background in any way, shape, or form. And we don't even have all the same ideologies. Our focuses are very different. I think sometimes yours and mine are. And so we bring that together into this larger conversation, which I think is what has to happen for us to grow as quickly as we need to be during that time. So talk to us a little bit about your take on having what I call a collective, and tell us how would you call that?
My take is on that I need the people who are just my friends outside of the spiritual world to keep me grounded.
Yeah.
To keep me here, to help me grow as a person, as a human being. You need that support as a regular everyday life. But then on the other side, I also need the support as a spiritual family, as a spiritual tribe, as my people, as we call it, because they feed my knowledge into the spiritual way. And we feed each other that knowledge. And by sharing that information, we grow and we help each other to awaken. The ones who are just friends and who keep me grounded, it's good because they are keeping me accountable as a human. I don't use my flight all the time. I'm not always out there. They pull me back because I also need to grow as a person also.
I think that is
balance.
Yeah.
I think for me.
I really appreciate that you're saying that. And it's true because, sometimes these conversations, we're talking about the woo-woo world, or if we're talking about aliens or our galactic family or weird experiences at Mount Shasta, they really can get very, I want to say heady, but it's not that. They can get out there. I call it out there like Pluto, which is so much fun and so expansive and so exciting. And I really could live there. But you're right that when you come back into, regular everyday life, those conversations change me at a cellular structure. I'm different when I go back into the world. But I also do have to be, in this terrestrial world, I have to go grocery shopping, and I have to take care of my family and support my friends. And in those ways, that's more of real life. So you're right. We do need this real balance. And I'm so appreciative that you brought that out, because we do. Sometimes we need to come back down to our 3D world and live in it. But it doesn't mean that we can't take some of that with us. Some of our new understandings with us. I know for me, in the past 2.5 years, I'm not the same person that I was. The day that we met, for sure, the expansion has changed. But I feel like because of this collective, because of these conversations, I'm better also in my real world too. I can remain more neutral. I can have a clearer view, not get so mired down sometimes in the problem. So I think, having that balance is really incredible.
What about the idea of our friends who are not into the spiritual just yet, to keep us from growing? Not from growing, sorry, that's the wrong. What about the idea from our friends who are not in the spiritual world, who keep us accountable to grow within ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to be more patient, to be more kind, to be more compassionate, loving, and all of that. So, now that I'm thinking about it, now we're having this discussion like we normally have it, that those friends of ours who are not into the collective or the spiritual part, they are our greatest teachers, because they actually challenge ourselves to be all of that we talk about in the spiritual world.
It's true. It is true. I think, of course, every person we know becomes a teacher. Sometimes that's the most aggravating thing on the planet to know about, but it's true. I mean, it's just a different focus. And I think we do have that challenge of carrying with us into those other relationships. Like you said, the new things we've learned, the new ways of being. I think that's a really, really important point for sure. Definitely. So, okay, we're distracted again. Back to what changed from this one event. I really love this idea of remembering, wandering back around, and it's about how so many things changed in one 3-day period, and how your life can take a completely different course from one decision. So, they're important. And yet when we're in them, sometimes we have no idea. So what happened next? You went up on stage, you gave your messages, and then what happened? What was another thing that shifted for you?
Well, I mentioned about my forgiveness towards my mom,
right?
Connecting with that feeling that I had that I didn't know that I was carrying, so opening that door and allowing that to leave, that to heal, shifted to a more compassionate, to a more understanding. Now this is why, I was feeling all these hurt and these pains and all these other things. Even when people were mentioning something or when people were leaving, I was taking them very, very personal, because it was like my mom leaving again.
Oh, yeah.
So for that, it was a big awareness for me.
That's huge. That's huge. I think that's important too when we attend these sorts of trainings, or for this one for me was less of a training and more fun, because it was a looser, there wasn't a particular topic, it was a looser collective of these 3 teachers coming together. But when we go to these things, to be open to what could happen and not necessarily expecting, because I'm sure you had no expectation of that happening. Like you said, you didn't even know it was a thing. So then it's open. So, coming with an open heart, coming with being available to whatever's there to receive, I think is so important.
And I think, what for me is, I understand, there has been so many teachings, and we will touch on more on that, you know. But there has been so many teachers from then to now of the growth that I had to do, the knowledge that I had to understand before I could pass it on to somebody else, you know. And it was understanding me, understanding the situation that I was in, and the things that kept coming up for me. Understanding where to follow your intuition, from which part of your body to follow your intuition from. You know, because as you know, we follow our intuition, but where does it come from?
Yeah.
Which part of your body do you follow the intuition from? Because it can lead you to the wrong directions too.
Yeah, very true. You know, I think what's interesting, that seminar for me, my head was not connected to my body the whole seminar. I arrived, you know, kind of in this fog, and not having any expectation. I really had one thing in mind. I knew I would meet someone, but I also had no expectation for what I might learn there. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, being in that state was a real positive, because I kept trying to connect. I kept thinking, what am I supposed to learn here? And I don't remember anything that any of the teachers really said. It was more of impressions. You know, being with Denise Lynn, like you said, I mean, just being around her, she's so joyful and sweet and kind, and everything she gives is uplifting and dear. Mm-hmm. I loved Lisa Williams as well. She was just raucous and funny, which I loved that. I mean, I loved it because it wasn't serious. And for me, it showed me something. Yeah, and it showed me something I'd never seen before. You know, many of the trainings I've been to, and I've been to many because I love them, but also, I love learning, but been to a lot. It was always very serious. And there was this sensation. Yeah, and there's something very like heavy about them, and this desperation to learn and to hear everything. And for me, when I go to a training, I'm always, I never allow myself to do the deep work because I'm listening so carefully to learn the techniques, you know, so there's this weight about it. This seminar for me was none of that. It was so light, and I just couldn't connect into a lesson, a message. I was just there in a way, you know. And for me, there was this sensation of things expanding and changing, and it was actually the end of something for me there. I used to listen to Hay House every day, the whole Hay House radio lineup, when I put my face on in the morning. Now I talk to you when I put my face on, but when I put my face on in the morning, you know, I'd listen to them, you know. And there was this very similar line of ideas. And I love them. I'm so grateful for them. I love the things that they put out. I love what's being talked about there. But after the seminar, none of that fit for me anymore. It was like there was this huge opening and expansion of idea that then when I would try to go back and listen, I felt like I was going backwards. I felt like I was rehashing old ideas. And I think in a lot of ways, those what's there is for people who are initiating, who are getting into these ideas, who are being invited to learn about them and to expand. And then for me, for whatever reason, that ended, and I began to get information other places, and a lot of it from our conversations and from other conversations with what I now call my collective, you know, my group. Things that came from places that I would never consider looking, you know, books that other people have read that I would have never looked at. They were outside of my genre, but became important. Cultures that I wouldn't have considered, you know, now, you know, are being shared with me. So for me, for whatever reason, that's what happened. One of the things that happened there. And I think it had to do with this lightness of mind and this openness of mind, which wasn't really my choice. It wasn't on purpose. It was just the state I was in when I was there. So I think my point in sharing that piece is that sometimes that's the way it is. You don't always have to, and I'm talking to myself, control what happens, you know, at one of these things. You don't really know what's going to take place or what you're going to receive. So for me, that was a big thing and a big lesson, and something I actually loved that. I love that piece of it for myself.
It's true. For me is, when I came there, I left a little piece out because when I actually came there, I had met a lady who actually lives in Phoenix. She is my trainer's mom. And I've been with my trainer for a while now, at least 8 years, if not more, but on and off. But I was talking to her about that I was going here to Phoenix and I was going to this conference and all of that. And she's like, oh, she goes, you need to come earlier and you need to stay at my house, because she happened to come here and I happened to meet her. And I'm like, no, because, I don't like to impose on people. I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't. And then her daughter actually pulled me aside and said, you don't understand, when my mom asks you to go, she really likes you. And it would mean the world to her if you actually take it up on her. And I said, okay, if this means a lot to her and I don't want to offend her, I will do that. And so I went down a couple of days earlier, and she, what an amazing lady. I forever grateful to her. Lisa, she took me down. We went to different areas. She took me to different stores. And she took me on a trip to, oh my gosh, to see all the red rocks, to see the amazing energy that's at, I can't think of the name now, it's escaping because all I'm thinking is about Lisa.
Not Sedona.
It's Sedona. No, she took me to Sedona. So
okay.
Thank you. She took me to Sedona, and she's like, you need to go to this different place. And she took me to see the church up in the rocks. She took me to see all these beautiful mountains and beautiful sacred places. And she, it's just so amazing. And forever grateful to her. And that's how my trip to this actually began. She opened up this whole big door. Because I think if I had just come to the event, I may not have had such a different outcome.
Right. Yeah. Being willing and open.
Yeah. And so when I came back, I had collected a few things and I said, I need to put this in a frame, because this day, my life has changed.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why and how my life would change, but I knew that my life had changed.
Yeah.
So I have them in this beautiful frame. I have the cards that we received at the entrance, the feather I'm using. I have my name tag. I have, the trip ticket. I have a couple of rocks from Sedona. It's my little, altar that I use.
So was that really your initiation into sacred place, or had you already had some of those experiences before? Because since then we've had quite a few adventures, yeah. Including sacred places, yeah. Physical places. So was that an initiation for you of sorts, or had you had that experience before?
I had that experience before, because there's a sacred place here that I need to work with, and it's not the time just yet for me to work with that sacred place. I've shown a few people where it is, but there's such an energy there. It's not totally opened, because I opened 2 of but there's another spot. So there's three spots. For me, it's like always, always the triangle, Holy Trinity. I've been working with the Holy Trinity now for a little while. And so this started here, and I quite couldn't understand it yet. So when I came there and I ended up going to Sedona and this beautiful sacred place, what affected me in Sedona was she took me to this house, which is a B&B, Airbnb. And behind it, they have a labyrinth.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
she took me to walk this labyrinth. Now I've been to other labyrinths. They don't have the same energy. Because I think some of the labyrinths, they have to have the energy for you to connect with the earth. They have to have the sacred portal area. Because if there is not, they're not built on with the intentions and whatever intention needs to be there and the energy that needs to grow there, it doesn't work, in my opinion. So for me, walking this labyrinth, I wept, which I have
Yeah.
never done before.
So big energy release.
Big energy release because the energy there was so amazing. And then I ended up going to have this big crystal store that she always visits. I ended up going in there, and there was a lady, I was a native, who was doing readings, and she said, would you like a reading? I said, sure. And, she turned to me and she's like, it's like I know you. And I'm like, okay. And she invited me to go down to, every year apparently they do have native healing circle that they do there. She invited me to go to be part of this native healing circle. And it just the amazing things that came out of this trip. Like, I mean, it can never be fulfilled with gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah, I really get it. And I want to bring us back to, as we were kind of hitting up on our hour time here, the idea, you said the word portal. And so that's something you and I've become quite familiar with since that time, which is so fun. But I get the sense in a lot of ways for each of us, and it would be interesting to know if anyone else experienced it at this event, that we step through a portal, and for us, both speaking Italian, that word has a different meaning. I mean, it really is a doorway. It's
Yes.
moving from one place to another. And it seems as though, that was that portal, that it transported us into a next phase, a next period of massive growth,
Yes.
and so much love and appreciation and support. I mean, what an amazing time, this has been in the past 2.5 years, and there's so much more, but it's been fast. I think that was one of the biggest things that I've experienced. I know you've shared that there was this real quickening of information, of understanding, of places that we ended up, Italy, Sicily, Shasta, the redwoods,
the obsidian everywhere, and it's all I remember.
Yeah,
obsidians everywhere. Oh,
massive. So, I think for me, I think the point of this conversation for sharing with other people is several things. One, be aware when you're stepping through a portal. When things feel like, oh my gosh, they've changed, recognize it and embrace. Because I feel like that's what we've really done. Is we've been aware all along something shifted. And each time that things shift again, we're like, okay, we don't know what, but something just shifted.
Yes.
And being open and aware. I think also, to come back to our original conversation about collective, about having that awareness of who's coming in. I think you have to be careful also, but making sure that those people are supporting, are loving, and are sharing. Sharing, I think, has been for me the biggest thing. Being willing to receive and also give when that is appropriate. And then listening to the call, being willing to go on a grand adventure. So I want to hear what your thoughts on that are. And then I want to just give a little bit of a hint about grand adventure. So
it's definitely true. Follow your intuition. Like I said before, make sure the intuition is from your heart and your solar plexus. Listen to the sign. Be aware of all the sign. And not necessarily you need to know the level of the growth or why things are happening, because I think sometimes we can get hanged up on why is this happening? Why? Instead of allowing it to happen and allowing the growth to take place, allowing our expansion of knowledge and just to permeate through each part of our body. Because I think this is something else that we have discovered, that our whole body shifts, going through these changes and going through these following our intuition, being aware, being awake, listening. And it's okay to feel every feeling that you are having. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel that you don't want to do anything today. We don't necessarily have to always, when we talk about, step outside of the comfort zone and step outside of the box, that doesn't mean you have to do it today if you're not feeling up to it.
Yeah, I think that's really, really true.
I think growth is such a big word, and it's so misunderstood in so many different levels. So.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I appreciate you saying that, because it really has been a big learning that there is also growth in those days when you need to just stay home. Mm-hmm. There's learning, and there's processing, and there's releasing. Sometimes in those days where you just feel like crap, and we had this gift of being able to share that with each other. Man, I feel funky today. And you might feel funky at the same time and be experiencing the same physical symptom. And maybe two of my friends are, and maybe two of your friends are. And the joy in that is we're like, oh, maybe this isn't just us. Maybe I'm not just depressed today. Maybe something is shifting in our atmosphere, in our energy, on the planet, that's making us all have the shared experience. So in that way, acknowledging those emotions and feelings just for what they are, not having to know for sure what they are, but just and sharing. Sometimes there's so much information in that. So I think that is a massive, massive lesson that I didn't even realize till you said it now that we've received, but we really have. And we've had this real gift of being able to bounce it off each other, and the rest in our collective. So, part of this is, this big growth thing, and why we really wanted to begin this conversation is to share some of the amazing things. Oh, there's Gabriel.
He wants to be in the picture.
So, yeah, he's so pretty. And it's funny because whenever we talk, he needs to be in the room. So he contributes somehow. We don't know, but
he's my healer.
Yeah. So Carmela and I, when we met, one of the big things that cemented us together is she said, I really want to see Mount Shasta. And I said, Mount Shasta? What for? It's right down the street from me. It's like an hour and a half from where I live. And she's like, it is? I'm like, yeah, it's there, but what do you want to, it's beautiful, but what do you want to go there for? So here's this place, this massive vortex site and place where people from all over the world come, and I had no idea. So Carmela helped initiate me to this, magical place. And she ended up coming out to visit, and we went on a really amazing adventure where we experienced portals, and plural, and an adventure from the time our feet hit the ground. I think it probably happened and started before that. And when we share this story, I'd love to talk about that, about the days leading up to an adventure and the physical changes that happen in the body. So important. We have started to get an inkling of when, in advance of one of these adventures, what starts to happen. So I think that's important. We really want to share with you a group of photographs that came from there that Carmela took that are absolutely stunning. Not just beautiful, but orbs and faces and possibly aliens. We don't know. So anyway, we'll share that with you very soon. Thanks for joining us. If you're here, please leave comments. Get into the conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts on your own collective, your own group, the ways that they have helped you grow. I think we'd like to know specifically in the last 2.5 to 3 years what your experiences are. If you've had the same kind of quickening of information, of growth, of expansion, for us, it has been a wide range of things, not just one thing, right? Wouldn't you say that too? I mean, this massive range of ideas and information and topics.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear from you on that way. Carmela, how can people find you if they want to learn more about you or work with you directly?
Well, I do have a couple of places where they can connect with me. And one is through my website, powerarisinspirit.com. And they can send me an email through Carmela Lamanna at outlook.com. I'm also on Instagram at Power Rising Spirit. I have a Facebook page. Actually, I have 3 Facebook pages. I have a private one, but then I have one where I post all my inspirations. It's called Power Rising Spirit. We also do with another friend here. We do the live Wednesday night Facebook videos, and it's the Spirited Duo. So you can, through Facebook, through email, through Outlook, you can connect with me through that.
And if you're in the greater Toronto area or happen to be traveling there, you put on events occasionally, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So would a person just contact you directly to find out what the events are, or is there a particular spot they might learn about those?
They can connect with me, through emails, and I'll let them know. There's one that's being put up now. I'm still doing through the works. There's a couple actually that I'm working on. One is going to be next month, and will be with me and my partner Nancy, and we'll be doing messages, providing messages through spirits, and talk about how we connect with spirit. We're going to talk about a little bit of that tonight on our Spirited Duo page. So at 7:30 tonight, we'll go live and do an example of giving messages. If anybody wants messages, to connect through that. And I am working on I don't want to call it healing because I don't want to scare people off. I want to open that page to people, and I want people to experience the different types of healings that there are out there, modalities that can help actually with your illness. If you're going through, they can work with your doctors and open up your body even more to be a receiving of any other medication that you need, any other, physical work that you need to be done by the medical industry if you are in this space with your body, with your energy.
Cool. And people can work with you one-on-one still if you're in the Toronto area? Yeah. Yes. And do you do some work online as well if a person's not in the Toronto area?
Yes, I can do. I usually do remote healing, giving messages through this way we can connect, or even through the phone. I prefer doing it in person because I can actually pick up their energy even more, so it'll become a stronger connection. I also love to go in people's home and smudge their house and clean up the dead energy, the stagnant energy. When people do have an argument in the house, or they have a disagreement in the house, or someone with a lower energy comes in, there's a residue that leaves behind, sort of like that smoke that's kind of, curls up in the corner and it stays there. And by me going in and doing the smudging and the prayers and clearing it up, I've had a lot of feedback. People selling the house, they couldn't sell the house. I went in, cleansed the energy, and they have sold the house. They have moved on. There's this one lady that I went in and cleansed her house. Her husband came home and was like, "Oh, what did you do? It feels different in here." And the next time around, when he started to feel a little bit, he goes, "Can you call that lady and do it?" And he was a believer. And so I went in, and he wanted to be present because he wanted to see what I was doing. And I ended up cleansing the house, giving him a message. And he sat there like, "Oh, okay." Because, I never believed this, but now I believe it. So stuff like that, it makes my soul smile. It makes my soul happy because I know that will change their life. It will make them feel better. So
That's amazing. So sometime we'll have to get you to talk about a little bit more about that, about what smudging's all about what house clearing's all about. That'll be a lot of fun. So I think we'll plan to talk about that. So for now, I'm Liz Larson with Transform One Idea, and you can reach me at transformoneidea.com or transformoneidea@gmail.com. So if you're a coach or practitioner out there who could use some support in getting yourself online, getting classes going, or even just discovering what the core message of your work is, contact me. My motto is that the smallest shift can create the biggest change. So that's what we're looking for. I'm also here to support you if you're not in business, but you do want to create a change in your life and you're ready to do it right away. So I'm Liz at transformoneidea.com with Carmela Lamanna at the Power of Rising Spirit. Thanks for joining us for this fun conversation, and we'll be talking again really soon. Ciao.
Ciao.